In today's episode of Joe Knows Retirement, we're going to be talking about why there is no Roth break-even. We hear this so often from people who watch our channel or for those who are DIY in their retirement, and even from advisors who don't understand this content, even from advisors who are on YouTube who do not understand this concept. Very fundamental and very foundational concept in retirement planning. We're going to break it down today so everyone understands that there is no break-even on a Roth IRA or a Roth conversion. It's never too late to do a Roth conversion or a Roth IRA. There's no amount of growth that you have to see in your account for it to make sense. The tax you pay up front doesn't necessarily matter to the long-term picture. And so we got a lot to break down today. And so we're going to show you the actual math behind this and also the reasons why this doesn't matter and why you need to make sure you're listening to people with giving you the right advice. And so if someone's telling you this, I don't know if I necessarily listen to them. So hopefully this advice can be helpful for you in understanding that whole comprehensive feel to your retirement.
Joe knows taxes.
Joe knows the market.
Joe knows Social Security.
Joe knows income planning.
Joe knows pickleball? No.
This is Joe Knows Retirement.
So let's jump right into it with this example of why this is the case. So let's say that you have $100,000 in your IRA. And so I first want to start off with this. How much is that IRA worth? And you may say, it's $100,000. I've got my statement, my name, $100,000. Well, we had a couple that reached out to us from here on YouTube, and they were all excited. They said, hey, we got $1 million. We're ready to retire. Let's do this thing. And we told them, well, you don't have $1 million. And they said, yes, we do. Well, here's our name, $1 million on our statement. Everything's good. I go, no, you're missing a name next to yours. And so we have to understand that is not all our money. We have a partner, and that partner's name is Uncle Sam. And so with that $1 million, they didn't have that. They had $1 million less taxes. And so same thing with this $100,000 example with the IRA. If you want to go take out $100,000 to go spend, you're going to have to pay taxes. And so all that money isn't yours. And so let's just use for easy numbers here today, we're going to use a 25% tax rate. And so if you have a 25% tax on $100,000, your total value you're spending is going to be $75,000 of that IRA. And so I think a lot of you can understand that concept. Now, let's say that we want to do a Roth conversion. So if we go over here on this side and we say we have $100,000 in an IRA and we want to convert all of that $100,000 to a Roth, how much value do we have in the Roth? We have $75,000. And the reason why we have $75,000 is because we had to pay that 25% of taxes up front. And so here's where people they struggle with this. They say, well, I got $75,000 over here and I got $100,000 over here. This $100,000 is going to grow much more over time. And yes, on this statement, it will. But how much of this do you actually have? That's right. You only have $75,000 of spendable assets, just like in the Roth. And so if we have these two numbers, $100,000 and $75,000, don't forget it's only worth $75,000. Let's say you have $100,000. Let's project this out with growth over time. And so the rule of 72 says that if you get a 7.2% return on average for 10 years, then your investment will double. And so we're going to expect to invest in the same thing within this scenario here to show you that the Roth break-even is not a real thing. And so if you have $100,000 and it doubles in 7 years, you'll now have $200,000. Okay, great. If we have $75,000 in our Roth and it doubles, we only have $150,000. So break even tells us this isn't going to keep up. We're going to have more money over here. But what is the future tax rate? And so if the future tax rate is 25%, $150,000 less 25% tax. Oh wait, we don't have to because it's a Roth IRA. And so your value is $150,000 at that time. If we have this $200,000, how much is actually worth? So if I want to take out that $200,000 and I want to spend it, how much can I actually spend? I can only spend $150,000. So do you see with growth, the values stay the same. You technically only have $150,000 to actually utilize in both examples. It's just a matter of what your statement shows you because in your IRA, it hasn't accounted for taxes yet. And so I always ask people, what would you rather have? Knowing that it's going to be the same amount in the future, would you rather have $150,000 in the Roth or $200,000 in the IRA? And again, if you're smart enough to realize that this isn't worth $200,000, it's actually worth $150,000, I would argue that the majority of people are going to want this amount over here because you only had to pay tax on $100,000 versus $200,000. And so I want to break this down further. And so the thing that we always look at when it comes to Roth conversion is not the break even, it's about tax rates. So let me go through this example again with a different tax rate scenario. So if we're expecting a 25% tax rate today, we already went through the math, 100,000 turns into 75,000, you've got your 100,000 still in the IRA. But what if you're expecting in the future to be in a 10% tax bracket? What do you think we should do in this scenario? Well, this is where I would recommend to not do a Roth conversion. Because if that's the case, in the future, when your Roth IRA 75,000 doubles, it's only worth 150,000. When your 100,000 doubles to 200, and if you're only paying 10% tax on 200,000, you now have $180,000 of value versus 150. So that's why it's more about future tax rates. So I'm going to show you one more example of where this wins of doing a Roth conversion. 25% tax right now, we can assume that. Let's say that tax rates actually increased in the future. Let's say it went up to 30%. Now we have our $150,000 in our Roth because we decided to convert at 25%. We did not convert up front in the IRA. That's worth that $200,000. 30% of $200,000 is only now going to put that at $140,000 of value if we're going to pay a 32% tax. So would you rather have 150 or 140? That's why there is no break even with growth, only with tax rates. And so that's why it's important to look at tax rates. Now, let me dive into this even a little more to give you even more color of why this break even doesn't matter and why Roth conversions can make sense if you're going to expect to be in the same or higher tax bracket in the future. I want to make it clear, I don't recommend a Roth conversion if you expect to always be in a lower tax bracket. In retirement, we'd rather pay a lower tax rate. The only thing to worry about that is with future tax rates to know if even if you will be in a lower bracket, will those brackets be higher? That's the only consideration. So let's break this down even further. We just talked about this, that if we do our Roth conversion today, we're only going to take out 100,000, which likely isn't going to force us into multiple higher tax brackets. Versus if we take out 200,000 in the future, that may force us into multiple higher tax brackets in the future. So why does that worry me? Because if you don't do the Roth conversions maybe early on in your retirement, or maybe when you're 60, before Social Security, before Medicare IRMA starts getting calculated at 63, while you're married filing jointly, you may be able to do that at a more advantageous time and have less other taxes involved in this calculation. Versus in the future, if you take all 200,000 out, or now you're just going to be forced to take out more over your retirement due to higher required minimum distributions amount at 73 and 75, depending on your age, then that can cause more problems in these other areas. And so if I have to take out 200,000, I may no longer be in that 25% tax bracket we talked about. I may now bump up tax brackets than what that 100,000 withdrawal would have put me at. So that's one consideration, because now you're taking out a higher income, but now you're going to be forcing yourselves to have a higher income for Medicare tier calculations. So we all know that the modified adjusted gross income is what that goes off of. And it's up above $200,000 at this point if you're married to reach that second tier. And so that's a consideration of that. But the other one that people don't think about is this widow's penalty. And so if you're married filing jointly, when one spouse passes, you go to single tax brackets, and so you're going to have to pay nearly double the amount of taxes at that point. So would you rather pay the Roth conversions now at that potential lower rate with the married, or in the future at potentially higher rates? And so that's the consideration to think about. And then the other consideration is with a Roth IRA, there is no RMDs, and so your money can keep compounding and growing tax-free throughout your retirement. So when you hit that age 73 or 75 for those required minimum distributions, you are not forced to take it out. That money keeps growing tax-free, and that can lead to more growth over time in your accounts over the long term. Also, if you think about it even a step further, if you want to leave money behind to your children now have to leave an IRA. When they take out an IRA from you, it has to be taken out over 10 years, which can significantly increase their tax bracket at that time. Versus a Roth doesn't increase their tax bracket, but also they can have that tax-free growth for another 10 more years is an advantageous thing to think about. Versus having it in the IRA, when they take out that money, likely going to do equal amounts over time because they don't want to have a huge tax bill later on, then they don't get the tax treatment that moving forward. They're going to have to reinvest it in capital gains treatment and likely pay 15% of capital gains tax. Versus the Roth, there is no cap. They're not having to take it out and reinvest it. It just continues to grow in that Roth for as long as they can. And so I hope this was a really good understanding for you. And if you still don't agree with me, please put in the comments below. I'd love to make sure everyone fully understands understands this concept and the perspective of what we're trying to explain in this video. And this is a fun topic for me. I've seen, like I said, advisors that don't get this right. I see a lot of people that don't understand this. And so we'll get people that say, well, you know, I mean, if I was 30 years old, I'd do a Roth IRA, but I'm 60. I don't think I should do a Roth IRA. Well, it depends on what you're referring to. And so if you're referring to your tax rates, then yes, I agree. But if you're assuring because, well, now I can't get the tax-free growth in a Roth for a longer period of time, as I showed in the math, that point doesn't matter. It's all about the tax rate that you're going to pay. So hopefully this was educational for you. I hope this causes and stirs some emotions in people to make sure they understand this concept. Share it with a friend, put it in the comments below, and let's make sure this video can reach as many people as possible to make sure they have the right information when it comes to Roth IRAs and Roth conversions and tax planning in retirement. And I also did a book on this called I Hate Taxes. And so if you really want to dive into this further, I created a whole book on this concept of tax planning in retirement. And I just tried to make it at a 4th grade level, but keep it more advanced concepts. And this is something I talk about in the book, is this break-even concept that so many people that misunderstand or don't, realize how it works. So again, hopefully it can be helpful for you. And we'll see you on the next video of Joe Knows Retirement.